So in this video we'll be continuing on the theme of algebra, focusing on expanding single brackets, including expanding and simplifying expressions. So we use brackets in algebra as a way of simplifying multiple things being So we use brackets in algebra as a way of multiplying multiple things being multiplied by the same thing. So for example, we can simplify 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 as 5 times 3. So here we've got, this here is our quantity, or how many. So we just write quantity, in other words, how many. And the thing that follows it is of what. So here we've got 5 lots of 3. Now in the same way, if we start introducing algebra, if I had y plus y plus y plus y, then that means 4 times y, because that I've got 4 y's being added together. And again, this is one of the reasons why we don't use the multiplication symbol in algebra, because obviously it looks like the letter x. That then therefore gives us a simplified answer of 4y. Now in the same way, if we had something involving a bracket, so if we had x plus 2 plus x plus 2 plus x plus 2, then I can rewrite that as 3 lots of x plus 2, and then writing that using the rules of algebra as 3 bracket x plus 2 close bracket. So when expanding a bracket, we simply multiply everything outside the bracket by everything inside, and that's generally the general rule of when you are multiplying out brackets, is you just multiply everything outside the bracket by everything inside the bracket. Now, two of the most popular ways of expanding brackets is by using what we call loops, or by using a grid method. And it's entirely up to you which method you prefer to use. Personally speaking, the loop method is probably quicker and easier, which tends to be a big favourite with regards to students. However, the grid method is that you're less likely to make a mistake. It takes a bit longer, but as I said, it doesn't compensate for accuracy. But again, we'll show you some both methods when we go through some examples, which is basically what we are going to do now. Now, in terms of this, so here we've got some expanding questions, and these are very, very common in terms of how they're written. So if you were to get this question in an exam or in a test, or even in a homework or classwork, they would look very, very similar to the ones that you can see on your screen at the moment. Now, in each of these questions there is a slight difference, so if you're not too sure, and I'll talk you through each of the steps that make each question different. Now, before we start, the key thing when multiplying out numbers and letters is what's written in this box here. Is that when you are multiplying, you can only multiply numbers with numbers and letters with letters. Now, if you've got a combination of the two things, then you can't join them together. You just simply write them next to each other. Numbers go first and letters get written in alphabetical order. But like I said, if that makes absolutely zero sense to you, do not worry, I will go through them when it comes to some of these examples. So let's have a look at question 1. Now, in question 1, I'm going to go for the loop method, which, like I said, is the quickest and probably easiest way of multiplying out the brackets. Now, for using loops, all I'm going to do is first multiply the number outside with whatever's inside. So here I've got 3 times x, which is 3x, plus, and then I'm then going to do 3 times 5, which is 15. So again, where I've got this from is 3 times x, which is 3x, and then 3 times positive 5 gives me positive 15, and there is my final answer. Now, if I want to do this using a grid method, then what I'll do is I'll set up a grid that looks very, very similar to this. And it's very, very similar to how you use the grid method when you are multiplying out, let's say, double digits or doing long multiplication. So here I've got an x and I've got a plus 5. Now you can see that what I've got in brackets, I've written on this sort of top shelf that I've got here. Now for this, what I'm now going to do is just multiply out the two things together. So here I've got 3 times x, which is 3x, 3 times positive 5 is positive 15, and then all I then need to do is add the two boxes together. So it's 3x plus 15, there is my final answer. So with question 2, so here I'm going to use my loop. So I've got 5 times x, which is 5x, and then 5 times minus 7 is minus 35. Now, one of the key errors and one of the things that people who use the loop method are more susceptible of doing is they forget to multiply the second thing in the brackets. So for example, a common mistake they would write for question 2 would be they would multiply 5 times x, which is 5x, but then write minus 7, because they've forgot to multiply out the second term, and that's where the grid method stops you from making that mistake. So like I said, both methods have got their advantages and disadvantages, and it's entirely up to you which one you want to go for. So again, if I was going to do the grid method for question 2, I would set up my grid. So here let's use a different colour pen. So I've got 5, I've got x, and I've got a minus 7. So here 5 times x is 5x, 5 times 7 is 35, but I've got odd number of negative numbers, so therefore it's minus 35. And then all I then need to do is add the two boxes together, and I've got 5x, and the plus and minus becomes a minus, so it's minus 35, and there is the final answer. Now for the rest of them, I'm going to probably just stick to the loop method just because it's a little bit easy. So in terms of number 3, so again, it doesn't really matter whether you've got numbers at the start or letters at the start, it doesn't make a difference. We're still going to write it in the same order. So here I've got 4 times 10, which is 40, minus 4 times t, which is 40, and there is my final answer. For question 4, now here what we've got is we've got a number and a letter inside. So here I'm going to do 2 times 4x. Now again, you can only multiply numbers with numbers, letters with letters. So here I've got 2 times 4x. So here I could only simplify the 4 times 2, which is 8, and then I've just got an x because that's just a rogue letter. Now if what this basically means is 4 times 2 times x. So what I'm going to do is I do this bit first, which is 8. So that's 8 times x, which then becomes 8x, and that's where the 8x has come from. And then finally I've got 2 times plus 6, or positive 6. So 2 times positive 6 gives me 12, and there is my final answer. For question 5, now here we've got just letters. So what happens when we've got letters times letters? Well, there's no simplifying involved. The only thing I've got to remember is we write them in alphabetical order. So x times p is the same as px, minus x times y is xy, and there is our final answer. With question 6, again I've got letters, so I've got h times h. Now I could write this as hh, however that's the same as 2 times 2, in which we can write this as 2 squared. So h times h, we can write that using powers is h squared, plus, and then I've got 3 times h times 3b, so I've got 3, and then I've got to multiply h by b, so that's just b h, and there is my final answer. For question 7, now question 7 I've got a negative number, so here I need to be wary and use my skills of multiplying with negative numbers. So here I've got minus 3 times x is minus 3x, and then I've got minus 3 times positive 6, so again 3 times 6 is 18, but as the signs are different it becomes a minus, so it's minus 3x minus 18. For question 8, again I've got a minus number and a letter, so here I've got minus 5 times 3 is minus 15, and then I've got ax, and then I've got two minuses. So here let's just deal with the numbers first. I've got 5 times 4, which is 20. I've got a times f, which is af, and then I've got a minus times a minus, which gives me a positive answer. So there it's minus 15ax plus 20af. And finally for question 9, again I've got p squared times p, so here I need to add an extra p, so it's p cubed minus, and then I've got p squared times ep, well I've got an e, and then I've still got 3p, so it's going to be p cubed. So the final answer there is going to be p cubed minus ep cubed. Now if you were to write the letters the wrong way around, so for example if I look at question 20 and let's say I wrote minus 15ax plus 20fa, then would you lose a mark? No, probably not. I would say it's pretty harsh if you lose a mark for that. However, it is very good practice if you do write them in the alphabetical order, and also it makes collecting the like terms a lot easier. Now generally speaking, with these types of questions, depending on how many things you've got in the brackets, you could easily get worth 2 marks for each question. So what you would do, you usually get 1 mark for the first thing being correct and the final mark for getting the second thing correct. Now one thing that isn't mentioned here is what happens if you had 3 things inside a bracket. Well, that doesn't make a difference at all. So if I just quickly get rid of all of these, in which I'm doing a very, very poor job. And there we go, I think that's enough space. So let's say I'm going to make up a question. Let's go for number 10. And let's just get this correct. Let's go for red. So question 10, let's say I'd had 3 and I've got 2x plus 7y plus 6. So again, using the loops, I'm going to do 3 times 2x. So again, I can only multiply numbers with numbers. So that's going to be 6x. And then 3 times positive 7 is positive 21. And then I've got a y. And then I've got 3 times 6, positive 6 I should say, is positive 18. And there is my final answer. So even if I had 3 things inside the bracket, it doesn't really make a difference. I still use the same method. Now again, and also just bear in mind, is just be mindful when, particularly when you're working with negative numbers, because sometimes they do catch a lot of students out when dealing with just those. So the next thing we move on to is expanding and simplifying, which is ultimately the next step from what the types of questions that we've just done. So this is when you have single brackets being added or subtracted together. Here we not only need to expand the brackets, but we also need to collect the like terms together if there are any. So for example, a typical question would ask you to expand and simplify. So as you can see in these questions, that we're going to do, not only are we going to expand this bracket, we also need to expand this bracket and then obviously collect any like terms we may have. So again with question 1, so if I start off by writing the question out again, now again I'm going to go for the more popular and more favoured approach, which is using the loops. So here is the question, so I'm going to do 3 times x, which is 3x, 3 times 8, which is positive 24, plus 5 times x, which is 5x, plus 5 times 2, which is 10. Now the key thing to note is try and not, and usually when I'm teaching I see a lot of students do this, particularly when I encourage them to use loops, is they do this straight away without actually having to expand it. What you want to try and do is do this first, write it down, and then do your second loop, write it down, because like I said, the key error that people do when they're expanding brackets is they forget, because they're rushing it and not concentrating, they forget to multiply that second term. So once we've then got our expansion, so that'll be generally worth a 1 mark, what we now need to do is collect the like terms. So here I've got 3x plus 5x giving me a total of 8x, and then I've got positive 24 plus 10, which gives me plus 34, and there is my final answer. And if I get rid of that and move on to the next question, so here I've got, so for question 2 I'm going to write the question out, so I've got 4x minus 5 plus 2x minus 5. So here I've got negatives, so I just need to be mindful of just that. So 4 times x is 4x, 4 times minus 5 is minus 20, plus 4 times 2x, which is 4x, and here I've got positive 2 times minus 5, which is 10, but the signs are different, so it's minus 10. And then from this, what I've then got to do is 4x plus 4x minus 20 minus 10. If I work those two things out separately, it's like an alternate way of doing it. So 4x times 4x is 8x, minus 20 minus 10 is minus 30. So if I combine those two things together, I get 8x minus 30, and there is my final answer. Moving on to question 3. So again, let's just quickly get rid of all of this. So moving on with question 3, we've got 4x minus 4 minus 2x plus 3. So again, 4x times x, 4 times x is 4x, minus 16. Now here I've got minus 2 times x, which is minus 2x, and then I've got 2 times 3, which is 6, but I've got a minus and a positive, which gives me a minus. So now I've got 4x minus 2x minus 16 minus 6. So that then becomes 2x, that becomes minus 22, give me a final answer of 2x minus 22. And then finally for question 4, so again let's just get rid of all of this to have a bit of space. The key ones you need to be careful of are the ones that in between the second bracket and the first bracket where there's a negative. So with question 4, we've got 6x plus y minus x minus y. Now this one looks a little bit weird, not only because we've got 2 letters inside the bracket, but also that there is a number missing in front of the second bracket. Now when you have got a no number in front of the second bracket, what I strongly recommend is you write down 1. And so from this, we've got 6 times x, which is 6x, 6 times positive y, which is positive 6y. I've got minus 1 times x, which is minus 1x. And then minus 1 times y is 1y, and 2 minuses make a positive. So from this, if I just group my x's together, I've got 6x minus 1x, and I've got 6y plus 1y. So here I've got 5x and 5y, and I combine those two things together, giving me a final answer of 5x plus 5y, and that there is my final answer. Now, as I said, with regards to this, it does take a little bit of practice. Especially be mindful when you've got multiple letters and multiple numbers, either inside or outside the bracket, and definitely be mindful when you have got a minus, particularly when you're expanding brackets, when you've got a negative symbol outside of the bracket. So just be wary of that, and it might be something to just make sure and brush up to make sure that you're very confident with your multiplying and adding, subtracting with negative numbers, because it goes from there. And like I said, if you want any further practice of this, there will be some worksheets with a good range of questions practicing what we've just discussed for you to have a look at, and the answers obviously will be attached on that as well.